Hello everyone, and welcome to the third lesson of the Azon Masterclass series. Today we are going to be finishing our site plans. So at the end of today's class, we are going to have a clear 20-page plan for our entire website. This is going to be, at its basic element, the page titles, the main topic that we will be featuring on each of the 20 pages throughout the entire website. Now, this is important to actually do ahead of time before you start building your website, because it gives you a clear idea of what you're actually going to need to write about. It'll give you a clear idea of how you need to assemble and organize your website. And it simply makes it so that you don't have to guess or try to get different odds and ends to fit together in the end once you have finished writing or building pages on a site. You kind of know what you're doing ahead of time. It makes it a lot easier to work your way through all of it and actually get the site finished. So with that said, a lot of what we will be doing in today's class really is kind of a continuation of what I have taught you so far in the first two classes of this series. I will be utilizing Amazon and utilizing Google to now complete the plans for my entire website. You can use other sources essentially by using Google and doing searches on Google. You can use pretty much any website as a resource to help you to learn things about your niche, to learn things about the different brands or products that you might want to feature, different informational topics that you might want to cover on your site. Pretty much anything that you could possibly hope to put on your site probably already exists out there on another website in one form or fashion. The point of your site is not to reinvent the wheel, basically. You are looking to more or less organize information that is already there to present it in a way that makes it easy to understand for a particular audience. So while the things that are on your site might be already out there on other websites, on your site it'll be in your own unique words, and it will be your own unique combination of all of that information presented to your site visitors. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into today's training. Now, as I mentioned before, a lot of this is going to be picking up where I left off in terms of planning my entire website. Now, before I actually get into specifics here and actually complete my website plan so you guys can see how I actually accomplish this, I want to talk about a few basic ideas first in terms of strategies that you can use for different kinds of pages that you could possibly want to create on these Amazon sites. I've done quite a few of these Amazon sites over the years. I've tried out a lot of different kinds of pages in terms of creating the content for them and also then seeing how they perform in the end. So I've had a lot of experience and have learned to kind of identify a few types of pages that have done the best for me. This is in performance, but also in ease of being able to research and put this content together, especially if I don't know anything about the product. And that's also one of the reasons why I have picked the topic that I have for this particular website, because it's not a topic that I know anything about. And so this forces me to have to actually research things. I can't just get all these ideas out of my head because I know a ton about it. I have to look it up on Google or Amazon and try to figure out what would people be looking for when they are searching for this topic or when they are interested in this topic. So with that said, there's a number of different kinds of pages that I have found to perform the best and be the easiest to put together. The main one has to do with just keyword phrases. Anything that you can find in the Google Keyword Planner, if it has decent keyword traffic and it relates to your keyword phrase, and if you also believe that the competition on that keyword phrase will be fairly low, that's certainly something that you can utilize when you are trying to plan your website. Any given page on your site technically could be a keyword page, but you don't have to make all of your pages keyword pages. If you find something that makes sense for your site, include it simply because it is best for your site visitors. As long as some of your pages are targeting keywords that you can find in this keyword planner and that are showing some kind of decent traffic, I recommend in the 100 to 1,000 range. As long as you're targeting 5, maybe 10 pages worth of these types of keywords throughout a 20-page website, it's plenty enough to be able to get Google's attention. On the other end of the spectrum, you don't really want every single page of your site to be based off of a specific keyword. I like to try to just wing it on at least a couple of the topics on my site, especially on some of the informational topics. If I feel like it's good information for the visitors, whether or not I can find a keyword to go with it, I still include that information. I think this is more of a randomizing your content. Google doesn't want to think that the only reason you're building this site, the only reason you are creating the pages of content that you've created are just to target these keywords. By seeing that you have some pages that don't appear to be aggressively targeting a specific keyword phrase, it simply makes your website look more natural and less like something that an internet marketer put together. This, I believe, helps you in the long run with the search rankings. So now, there are also other kinds of pages besides just things that you can base off of the keywords. Those are things like the informational pages. This can be based off of pretty much anything that relates to your niche or your products that doesn't have to do with actually trying to sell or convince somebody to buy a particular product. For example, if you think about any product that you're going to be promoting on a given Amazon site, that product is used for something. Why does somebody buy that product? If somebody is buying a radiation detector, they have one, maybe a variety of different reasons that they're going to want to use that product. So if I think about why somebody would want to use it and just create informational content surrounding those uses, when people are searching for information about those things, it ultimately leads them back to my product. And that kind of content makes sense on my website and ends up being useful for the people that visit my website. These informational topics can also be based off of questions. I want to show you what I mean by questions. If I go on to any Amazon product, something that is in my niche, something that I am considering promoting on my site, and I take a look at the customer reviews and the questions and answers that are available on that product, the information here can often lead me to figure out informational topics. Things like, does this measure radiation in ocean fish? The answer could be information that might lead me to create an informational topic. One example is the types of radiation. Even though I might not do something related to this ocean fish question because it really doesn't have to do with my niche, radiation certainly has to do with my niche. And so I think this could be important. So I'm just going to make a note, types of radiation: alpha, beta, X-ray, and gamma radiation. I can have a page talking about the types of radiation. What does a nuclear bomb actually generate? What kinds of radiation would somebody really be interested in needing to detect and protect against if they are interested in what my entire website is about? This information will be important to people that ultimately might want to buy the products that are being featured on my site. So whether or not I can find keyword traffic having to do with that topic, ultimately it's irrelevant because I would still want to include that information on my site one way or another. Even though I would want to have that information on my site, I can still go and find out whether there is traffic for that sort of thing. Now I can see that types of radiation has a ton of traffic on it. Types of radioactivity is actually a lot lower. Now again, not really knowing much about or really anything about this particular topic, I don't know whether that means the same thing, radiation and radioactivity. I would imagine that it does, but it might be worth a little bit of research just to verify. But if it indeed would end up being the same thing, I would probably want to go for this much lower traffic phrase, simply because it would be more likely that I could get a ranking there. Now, there's also the individual kinds of radiation, alpha, beta, gamma. All of these things are being searched for as well. So I might decide targeting all three of these things together might be the best way to go. This would be by using perhaps just commas. Simply using this phrase here most likely would qualify me to end up possibly ranking on this particular keyword phrase. It's kind of a more natural English version of it when I add in the commas and the word and to separate these three things out. So I've taken what originated as an Amazon question and I've turned it into an idea for an informational page topic on my site. And then I've gone and figured out what words or phrases could I try to target on this page to potentially attract some search traffic. Chances are, if somebody is asking it on a product, especially if you see the question being a fairly common thing among multiple products, there's a pretty good chance that people are searching on Google for that same type of information. Now, another kind of page that you might want to build on your site is a product or a brand page. I have talked about these a little bit already too, where I would look for these specific brands of whatever kind of product I want to go for. I was looking for brands of radiation detectors on my particular site. Each of these individual brand names, people might be searching for it. They might be searching for products that are found under those brand names. And so depending on the kind of information or the amount of information that you have available or that you think you would want to talk about on your website having to do with these products, also depending on the competition that might be out there for these products, you can decide whether going for a product-based page or a brand-based page would be right for you. Personally, I like to go for brand pages. They're one of my favorite things to do when I am building an Amazon site, is to build brand pages instead of product pages. And the reasoning behind that is that automated Amazon software out there that is creating complete websites with basically the click of a button, that kind of software is creating pages with these titles, the titles of the actual Amazon products. So in most cases, what you're going to see in the product title is the brand name followed by the product name or the product model. You'll pretty much see this kind of thing over and over and over again on the vast majority of Amazon products. So thinking like software that's going to be generating pages on all of these products, the vast majority of the keywords that those pieces of software are going to be targeting are going to be the product-based pages. So I try to do something different from what most of them are doing, something that also still allows me to tap into keyword traffic, and that is to go for the individual brands. So what I mean by doing that is on one of these brands that I'm thinking about targeting. We'll go with Radex. And if this one won't work out, I'll do another one. Actually, I just saw one that'll work. GQ is going to work. With GQ, if I wanted to feature GQ Geiger counters on my website, there are a couple of different options. There are a number of different models, it looks like. Some of these are repeats, but it looks like we have at least 1, 2, 3. That's kind of a variation. We probably have at least 5 completely different types, maybe even a number of different variations of some of those types of Geiger counters from this one particular brand. So I could create 5 separate pages on my site, each page targeting one specific Geiger counter, or I could create one page on my website for the GQ brand of Geiger counters. So I might call this page simply GQ Geiger counters. And then on that page, I could talk about the brand briefly, and then I could feature each of these 5 products and talk about them and include an Amazon ad for those individual products. The reason why I like the brand approach a lot better is because you're doing something different from the other marketers. You're going after different keyword phrases potentially than the other marketers. And even when you are going after the same keywords, like obviously you're still hoping to go for the product title type of keywords like the brand name and the product name. You still want rankings on those keywords, but you're approaching it in a different way from what the other marketers are doing. This gives you a much better chance of standing out in the search rankings, and it also gives you a much better chance of being a lot higher in the search rankings because Google kind of notices that uniqueness, that you are taking a different approach to this than what the vast majority of the other marketers are out there doing. So instead of having 5 pages on my site, by doing a brand page, I condense all this down into one. Not only is it gives me these advantages with the search rankings and competition, like I've talked about, but personally, I find this to be a much easier way of going about writing content for a page, for a brand, for different Amazon products. Because when you don't really know a ton about this product, and if Amazon gives you pretty limited information about this product, for example, up at the top here, I can tell that it's white. I can tell it's made out of plastic. I know what the model number is, the UPCs, which isn't really going to do me much good. I know it's roughly pocket sized, which isn't really going to do me a lot of good either. I know it's battery powered. Beyond that, I have this amount of information to go on for this particular product. The only thing other than that that I can get is down here in the customer reviews, in the Q&A, and then from doing my own independent research on this product. So if I wanted to write an entire page on my site about just this product, and I needed to come up with 500 words or possibly even more content for this product, I probably can't get that by just looking at this information and the information that's available to me up here. I'm going to have to dig deeper and look into all the reviews and the Q&As. I'm going to have to do my own research outside of Amazon on this product to really be able to write a quality 500 plus word article about this product. When you think about it from the brand page perspective, though, if I want a 500 word page about GQ Geiger counters, I could write an introductory paragraph about this brand, and then I could feature 4 or 5 different GQ Geiger counters on that page and write maybe 100 words about each of these Geiger counters. So now when I flip back to this Geiger counter, if I'm going through and doing my research and doing writing on this particular product, if I'm now looking at this page only needing to write 100 words about it, I can do that no problem with just the information that's available to me here. So if I don't want to, I don't have to necessarily dig a lot deeper to really be able to provide still a quality site, because I'll still be able to talk about the products. I'll still be able to note the differences in the products when I am going through that brand page. But I can put all this information together a lot easier when I don't have to say as much about each individual product. Another thing worth noting about the differences there with the brand and the product pages is if I were to feature 5 GQ Geiger counters with 5 individual product pages on my website, there's a pretty good chance that at some point throughout those 5 pages, I'm probably going to end up repeating a lot of the same thing. So I'll find myself having to say the same thing, but not wanting to say it the same way. And so I'll keep having to come up with different ways of saying the same exact thing on different pages of my website. And so you end up with a lot of just fluff content when you have those 5 separate pages, if those products really don't have a lot of major differences from each other. So anytime you have a brand and you have a number of different products you want to promote from it, if you really can't find but a few minor differences between each of those products of the same type from the same brand, it's really best to feature them all on the same page. Then you can talk about what they all have in common. And as you feature each of the products, you focus on the differences of those products. You know, what really makes this one different from all the other ones that are on this page? That's really what people are going to be interested in. They don't want to read the same thing over and over and over again about each product. They want to be able to quickly figure out why are they different and which one would be best for me based on those differences. So with that said, knowing these different kinds of pages and kind of how I would go about researching them, figuring out what are all the different possible page topics that I may want to cover on my website. Once I can figure all of that out, I can then proceed with actually beginning to give my site some kind of structure. Now, I always start thinking about the structure of my site really from the beginning of my research because I've done this so many times. And you can kind of see this taking place with the planning that I have done so far. Any of my informational topics that I've been coming up with. I've been grouping all of those together. Any of the individual product types that I think I might want to cover on my site, I've been kind of grouping that stuff together. I have books on fallout. I have radiation protective clothing, which I haven't actually done the research on. And then down here, I have all of the different stuff on radiation detectors, the different brands of radiation detectors. So I've already been thinking ahead of time about how I will organize and structure all of these topics onto my website. But if you're randomly going through and doing a bunch of keyword research to try to figure out what you really want your site topics to be about, you may just have a list of random topics relating to your niche at this particular point. So you want to find something in common among various topics that you will be covering on your site. The way I've always done it is kind of separating the informational topics from the topics that are going to be more sales based, where I'm targeting specific products or brand names. This kind of separation is not the only way that you can separate content, and it's not the only way that I separate content either. It's just the most common way that I will end up separating content. But there are times when I'm doing a particular niche and it just stands out with the topics that I have, that they need to be organized in a very particular way. It just simply makes more sense that way. So by organizing everything, you're kind of figuring out the structure of your entire website. Your website is obviously going to start with a home page. In addition to that home page, you need other main pages to link up to or to have up in the menu bar. I like calling these main pages either main pages or category pages. So the categories would be groups of topics that you would have on your site. So one might be an informational type of topic. You can call it informational in the beginning, but you eventually need to figure out a more specific name for that informational topic. For mine, it would likely be something having to do with um, fallout or survival or radiation in terms of educational type of information having to do with those different topics. So all of these would be my informational topics. And then I also have my product-based topics, which on this site's going to be books, clothing, and radiation detectors. Now, I could have 3 separate sections of my website and feature all 4 of these on the homepage as 4 completely separate areas of my site. Or since these are all product based, I could kind of group them all together. I could maybe call it something like radiation equipment, to where books and clothing and radiation detectors would be essentially a subtopic of my main category of radiation equipment. Right now, I'll just go ahead and I will call this one radiation education. So I now have a basic structure laid out of what my site is going to be about, what the different areas of my site will be. There will be also a couple of other random pages. I usually create an About Us page, just some general information about the site, um, including things like the required Amazon affiliate statement that you need to have on your site. Nowadays, other pages like the privacy policy. But besides these kind of miscellaneous pages, this is really the primary structure of your website. The home page links up to the main pages. The main pages link up to either individual pages or possibly some subcategories. And then finally, you link up to your individual pages. So on this site, as I begin to add in all of my topics that I have been researching, I'm kind of building up this hierarchy that my site will be based on. Now I have cheap and expensive brands. If I'm actually going to have subcategories under this radiation equipment section, then I don't think I want to have another layer of subcategories under radiation detectors. So I will probably just separate this on the same page. I might have maybe the expensive brands first and feature those, and then a little further down that page I'll feature the cheap brands, but they'll still basically all be grouped together under this one radiation detectors page. So for now, I'm just going to wipe out the mention of the cheap and expensive brands. I still have my research down below. I'm basically just copying a lot of this stuff that I'm moving up above. So now I have, if I go through and count my individual things, even if I'm leaving out these bottom two, I'll usually count the About Us page because that's usually more unique content, whereas the privacy policy is pretty much the same stuff from one page or one site to the next. So I'll count the About Us as one. Going from there, I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I'm up to 16 already. Each of these being an individual page on my website. So I really just have about 4 more things that I need to come up with. And the only thing that I don't have any of is clothing, and I only have one book. So I probably want to have more of both of these. I'm going to say at least one more book and probably 3 clothing. I would maybe even go with possibly 3 books and 3 clothing if I wasn't going to count the About Us page. So this would give me a total now of 20 pages if I come up with 2 more books and 3 more clothing items, and then feature 4 brands of radiation detectors. So by doing this organization, not only am I painting a very clear view of what I'm going to have on my site and what it's going to be about, but I'm also figuring out what I'm missing. What else do I need for this website? So I know I need the clothing. I think this could be something like a radiation suit. Most likely, it's probably going to be the more expensive ones. These are for more like chemical purposes. I don't believe these are going to offer any kind of radiation protection, if I'm not mistaken. Doesn't look like it. So, after quickly taking a look at that, I can tell that it's definitely going to be more of this expensive type of suit, which works out pretty good for being an Amazon affiliate. The commission on a $160, $170 suit's obviously going to be a lot better than on something that's only $6 or $7. Now, I don't necessarily know what people refer to this kind of product as. I called it a radiation suit. Um, it looks like it might be referred to by a number of different names because I'm actually starting to see things here now that I really wasn't seeing before on the previous page. And yet, at least some of these do appear to be the same thing. Whether or not they're rated for radiation usage, I don't necessarily know yet, but I can certainly take a closer look into these. It's also giving me some other potential ideas for things that I could cover, like a gas mask, because these actually mention for nuclear warfare. And again, this is another fairly pricey product that would deliver a decent commission. So I guess the biggest question here would be whether any of these are actually good for radiation or not. It's kind of looking like it might just be for chemicals though. So there might be a fairly limited number of these radiation suits that I can actually feature. I definitely have this one and also this particular one. It looks like there are some others, but they're pretty much the same thing as this one. It looks like it might just be one of those products that gets rebranded under a different brand name for these two. So my best bet looks like it possibly may be to target one or two of these radiation suits and then maybe go after a gas mask, perhaps. curious as to whether I could find one other type of equipment that would be considered protective clothing or gear that a person would wear. I don't know if radiation glasses. This would maybe be a possibility. This isn't necessarily protecting yourself. I've heard of Faraday cages before. I know a nuclear blast could create a electromagnetic pulse which could shut down electronics, and essentially a Faraday cage will protect the electronics. So this could maybe be equipment. If I changed my clothing into kind of clothing and equipment, more of a general category, then I could do radiation suits, gas masks, and then maybe Faraday fabric and Faraday cages. This way, I don't have to come up with, again, as much content for each individual page, for each individual product. Those radiation suits, it didn't look like there was going to be a ton of information, a ton of different information, especially. And it also doesn't look like the brands of those radiation suits are going to be any kind of important brand. So I think it might be best if I just feature a couple of suits on one page, a couple of the gas masks on one page, a couple of, if I could find more, anything related to Faraday fabric or cages on another page. And I believe that would make for easier to write pages and also for a more useful site, because I'd be covering more than just the radiation suits, which was kind of what it was initially looking like. If I was only going to go after clothing, the suits might have been the only thing that I could really go for there. So now the only thing I'm left with are books. I was looking at this book before. Sometimes, if you know one particular product, you might be able to find other relational types of products that could be good to promote as well. Sometimes by just looking at what people have viewed is another great possibility. Now I'm actually seeing yet another thing here that I believe could be good to add to my site. I might have to expand my clothing and equipment category a little more and do some iodide tablets. Potassium iodide. I believe this is what you would take if you either are going to be or have been exposed to radiation. So this would certainly be important for somebody in this situation. So now I'm kind of just looking for one more, maybe. This one looks like it might be a good possibility. It's got a lot of great reviews. It's got a number of purchasing options. None of them are really too cheap, so I'd get a halfway decent commission on any of them. With all of the reviews, I think I could also come up with, a full page's worth of content on it as well. So I think I'm going to use this as the topic for my other book. And then since I added the tablets in, I'm actually getting rid of one of my book topics. So now I have the plan laid out for my entire 20-page site. I've got my home page, that's one. My 4 informational pages plus the informational category page is another 5, so that puts me at 6. I have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And that's not even including the About Us and the privacy policy. So I'll actually end up with a 22-page website out of this particular plan. I think this would be a pretty decent site for somebody that is trying to come up with information for this type of a situation. It's promoting a variety of different types of products, a number of which are pretty decently priced, so they should deliver some good commissions. And it's possible for one person to come in and maybe even buy all of the different products or each of the different types of products that I'm featuring on this site. So now that I have my entire website plan, anything else that I need to do from here is really just work towards helping to build the entire website. One of the biggest things before I actually end up writing about my site topics is to just learn a little bit about them, especially in a situation like I am with this site where I don't have personal knowledge on maybe but one or two of these topics. Um, I can maybe write a basic survival needs type of an article off of knowledge that I have in my own head. Beyond that, I'm probably going to have to research pretty much everything that will be on this website. So, how do I get from having this plan to actually being able to write about each of these topics? This is one I want to talk about for just a few minutes here before this class wraps up. Now, ultimately, there's a lot of different ways that you can research any given topic. If you already know all the information and you can just write the content out of your head, as long as you believe that you will be covering all of the essential important parts that you think people need to know about that topic, it's quite okay to just churn the articles out with information you already have in your head. Those articles will be the most unique. It will give you the most unique website that way, certainly. But that's just not really realistic for everybody and for every possible site. Because unless you just build a couple of sites, you're eventually going to have to build a site about something that you don't know. So that is definitely what I want to kind of focus on throughout this training is by tackling a site for a topic that I don't know, I'm forced to do and demonstrate certain things to be able to come up with the information, to be able to come up with this site plan, to be able to actually write the content for this site. I will simply have to do some research. So the most common places that I will use are obviously going to be the Amazon website for any of the product-based pages. So pretty much for all of these pages of my site. So out of my 20 pages, that's going to be 14 of my 20 pages. The vast majority of the content and the research for those pages can likely come just off of the Amazon website. For anything else, I'm probably going to need to go outside of Amazon, probably over to Google to research some of these informational topics to actually be able to provide decent information on, say, the types of radiation. When you're doing your research, no matter what your source is going to be, it really doesn't matter where it comes from. What matters is that you don't just rehash the exact same information from those sites onto your own. You want to make sure that you're basically absorbing the information. Read the content, learn the things that you're going to want to tell people in your own article, and then go back and write your article. That way, you're writing from knowledge that's in your own head and not knowledge that is directly off of another website. You end up with much more unique content, more unique ways of saying things when you can go about doing that. Now, when you're using Google for research, you can really find a lot of different stuff out there. Um, Depending on your topic, depending on whether there might be a lot of competition for that topic already, there might be a ton of information out there about it, or there might be a fairly limited amount of information. Ultimately, seeing what your eventual competition might even have to offer you on a topic can be a really great way of going about researching. So if I'm thinking about building a page that's going to go after the types of radiation, or maybe the types of radioactivity keyword phrase, what would I be facing on Google? I'll go for types of radioactivity since that was the lower traffic phrase. So when I go and I look at the Google website, I can see that Google is definitely featuring one particular site, this Black Cat System site. And you can usually find that same site lower down in the actual rankings too. I'm also seeing what could be considered a #1 ranking right here. These questions and also videos. So chances are on this particular search term, it'd probably be pretty hard to get any above this one. And that's not really what people are going to initially see. To be able to see where I think might even be possible to reach, they're going to have to scroll down the page at least one time This would kind of be around the one scroll area, would get them to the actual search results. Now, hps.org, bbc.co.uk, these are really short domain names. These have probably been around for a long time. They probably have a lot of authority behind them. And so, honestly, my chances of beating those two sites out is probably not that great either. So, realistically, I'd give myself maybe here would be the best possible ranking that I think I could realistically achieve with a page on this topic. Now, since it's just an informational topic, I'm okay with that. I don't need all of my keywords to be winners. The information that I want to give people on this particular page is information that I want to be there regardless of whether or not I can get keyword traffic from it, just because it's good information for my website. But if I were to find this kind of a thing over and over again, especially on a lot of my brand or product pages, the pages that are going to be the most essential to help me get sales, I might want to reconsider a different possible way of targeting it, if at all possible. It looks like type of radiation, for example, it doesn't have the videos at the top at least. It still has a lot of the really competitive uh, websites. The videos are further down, and honestly, here, maybe even potentially lower than that would be the best that I could hope for. I know this one, though, would be a really high competition. There's a lot of search traffic on that phrase. So realistically, I might not even be able to get the top 10 of anything on that. So halfway on the previous search phrase would definitely be better than nothing. By kind of going through and seeing what is out there, what your potential competition is going to be like, you can not only get a realistic idea of whether it's going to be feasible to get a ranking on that particular search phrase, but then also when it comes to your research, why not go and see what else is out there? What is Google saying is one of the best results for that particular page? Now here, we're just dealing with a pretty small standard informational page. And this is actually the same basic type of informational page that I encourage people to build. Normally, the types of radiation would be a keyword phrase that most marketers would ignore because it's informational. It doesn't really directly sell a product for you. But just like they provide the information and then they lead it into something else here, they lead it into the sale of a Geiger counter. They also promote things like looks like maybe their eBay listings and other Geiger counters that they have throughout their website. So a company that's actually making and selling their own Geiger counters, it looks like, even they use this type of approach to attract the search engine traffic. They get people in this way and use it to help them to sell radiation detectors. But I can also see what kind of information, how much information are they putting out there? That one particular site, they didn't have a ton of content. This site honestly doesn't have a ton of content on this particular page. It is covering a number of different kinds of radiation, even neutron radiation, something that I didn't have before. that I may possibly want to consider including in my list. So by looking at these other websites, by looking at the competition, I'm accomplishing a couple of different things here. Number one, I'm learning information that I can then end up talking about on my own website. Information that's going to be useful to the people that are visiting my site. But in addition to that, I can kind of see what Google is requiring in order to get a ranking on this particular keyword. This is a fairly small amount of content. The other page was a fairly small amount of content also. If I found that this was kind of a trend, I could really only assume there's also a fairly small amount of content here. I could only assume one of a couple of things. Either these are really old websites that have just had this information out there for so long that Google just considers it to be an authority, or the websites are such authority sites, or they have a lot of links into them. Other than those kind of outside factors, I have to consider the actual content. And so I want to make it my goal to, whatever I can find from my competition out there for a keyword phrase that is important to get a ranking on for me for this website, where I see there's decent traffic, but I think the competition is low enough to where I can actually get my way in there. Then my goal is to beat my competition at their own game. If they're giving 500 words worth of content about the topic, and it seems to be pretty consistent that they are offering that fairly little amount of content to get their way up there, I'll try to do better than that. I'll try to offer 700 or 800 words or even 1,000 words worth of content. It still needs to be very relevant content. You can't get off topic too much. But if you can do essentially better than what is already out there, you're giving yourself a much better chance of succeeding in the long run. People will like your site better. It can result in people clicking on your search result more often, which can raise your search engine rankings over time. Google even employs, well, a third party company employs people that go and review what pops up in the Google search rankings. Because remember, the Google search rankings, it's all being created by a computer. And so, kind of as a quality control measure, Google will have people perform searches and they'll look at the results that pop up and they'll actually visit those pages and they will rate those pages on a variety of different factors. Things like how relevant is the content of this page to what was just being searched for? Is it helping somebody who was just searching that term? Are they finding what they were actually looking for with this page? That's ultimately what Google and any search engine for that matter is interested in. And they're always going to be interested in that. So if you can provide a really great page that somebody would definitely want to find after they have searched for a particular keyword phrase, your chances of being able to rank under that phrase go way, way up. Even if you can't get under that keyword phrase immediately, even if it takes a year or two to pop up into a particular keyword phrase, it's simply worth it in the long run. And those are the kind of keyword rankings that stick around for long, long time, if not indefinitely. Google and any other search engine, they're a business and they have a goal for their business. And that goal is to provide quality search results to their customers, people that are searching things on their search engine. So your goal as the website builder is to give them exactly what they're looking for and not to try to cheat or trick that entire process. And that's how you get and retain great search rankings. Now, there are a lot of other ways that you can go about researching things. I've used things such as utilizing other companies and businesses to learn information. Um, it's a little sneaky to do things like that, but when there are times, if you're facing a niche or a type of product that you just really do not quite understand, and you need a little bit of assistance to figure out enough about these things so you can write about them in a way that is going to help other people. You know, it's hard to do that when you don't really understand a product yourself. Try using other companies that sell those products. If there's a retail store that sells the product, go there and look at the products. Try to use them if you can. Ask somebody that works there to tell you a little bit about them. You're definitely going to learn and hear new things taking that kind of an approach compared with the standard information that you're likely to find online. And so, if you do put forth the extra time and effort to do something like that, your website will show it in the end. You'll have content on your site that people won't be able to find elsewhere in a lot of cases because what you went and learned in person might not already be out there on the internet. You know, you get a lot of different stuff that way than you would by just learning about a product off of the Amazon website. So it's at least something that I like to mention to people. Even if you don't go and visit retail stores in person, there's other ways to go about it. There's tons of online companies these days that will have phone support or email support. You can send or ask them questions and learn more about it. You might not get as good of information or as good of help as you would in an actual retail store from a live person, but there are certainly ways that you can go about trying to do those types of things from the comfort of your own home. Now, the entire idea here is you want to not only plan your entire website at this phase of the site building process, but you also want to kind of understand what each of the pages of that site will be about. I talk about this in a lot more detail in the guidebook for today's class, where once you reach this point where you have these different page topics, you go through them one at a time and write one or two sentences about that page topic, about what you would want to see on your website having to do with that page topic. So think of it as a summary. If somebody were to read one or two sentences about that page, what's this page going to be about? Tell them in one or two sentences. If you can go through and do that on each of the page topics for your site plan before you actually start building your site, it can really help to clarify things for you when you are, writing this content. Because you can go through this list one at a time. You look at your topic, you see what it's supposed to be about, and you can just focus on that one aspect. It's also really helpful if you end up outsourcing any of this work, especially if you outsource the actual article writing to somebody else. When you just give them a keyword or a brief page topic, you can get a wide variety of different things. If you have a number of different people writing the articles for just one website, and you just give each of those people a list of page topics or a list of keywords to do page topics for, when all that comes together, it's probably not going to make a lot of sense, or it's not going to really work together in any kind of predetermined way. So when you can give them a brief explanation along with each page topic, okay, what is this page about? Here's, a couple of sentences that will summarize whatever this page should be about. It makes it simply a lot easier for a writer to understand what they should be focusing on for that particular page. Now, it's also worth mentioning that some of these pages, your main category pages, like this radiation equipment page, it's not necessarily going to have a full-blown 500-word article for just this one page, because this page is going to be featuring other pages. It's going to feature the books page and the clothing and equipment page and the radiation detectors page. So I might only need to say 100 to 150 words about radiation equipment, and then have a summary for books and a summary for clothing and equipment and a summary for radiation detectors. Those things combined make up all of the content for that entire radiation equipment page. So I'm really only writing full-blown individual articles for the individual pages of my site. That would be the 4 informational articles up here, the 2 book pages, the 4 different types of equipment, and the 4 different brands. So we're talking 14 of my 20 pages are really going to need full-blown articles. At least part of the rest of the pages, the other 6 pages on my site, at least part of those pages are just going to have summaries about those other 14 pages that are going to need to be those full-blown articles. So the summaries also kind of come into play to where if I write a sentence or two about each of these brands, I can go back when I'm writing my radiation detectors page, I can include those summaries on that radiation detectors page. So I end up using content from those summaries if I write them at this point. I can use that stuff on my website later, and it helps to provide myself some direction. And if I'm going to have somebody that I outsource the writing to, it can certainly help to give them some direction as well, as far as what they need to be doing, what each page topic is going to be about. So your goal for this particular class is to complete your research and site planning on your niche. You want to end up with, at the very least, a listing kind of like what you see here that I have put together for my site. You need a list of 20 different pages that you will be putting on your website as well. Preferably go through each of those 20 topics and write that brief sentence or two summary. But at the very least, just get up to this point in the training by the end of this class, and that will put you in the position for our next class. The next class in this series, we will actually begin to set up the website. But before we actually get into building the site, there's kind of some initial groundwork to do. First, we have to get things like hosting and the domain name set up, get WordPress installed, get different plugins and things of that nature installed on the site, configure a lot of initial settings. Some people that are taking this training have never even used WordPress to build a site before, and so they might also need to learn how to use WordPress as well. So those things we will actually be covering in the next 2 classes of this series. The next class will be getting the website actually set up. The class after that is going to be more of a WordPress tutorial. And then so after that, we will actually begin to build the actual website. So it'll be a couple classes away before we get to the real construction of this site. In the meantime, though, get to this point in the planning so you at least know what your entire site's going to be about. And then we will build on this stuff later on in the series.